Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Explicit Measures Podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday.
Hello. Good morning.
Hello.
How are you, gentlemen, this fine Thursday morning?
I woke up this morning. I was like, oh man, it's already Thursday.
It's a good start. That's a good start when you wake up.
Just gotta be able to wake up. I have a checklist, and the first thing on my checklist every morning is wake up. That's number one. Check it off most every day.
Yeah. Well, so far you haven't missed a day yet. That's a good
Yeah.
thing.
Whew. I have the alarm set.
What a streak you have.
Oh man, I am not a morning person. That's 100% sure. But
Well, hey, whether it's 6, I don't know, Tommy, 5 earlier,
Tommy gets
7,
up
8,
early.
9, 10, as long as the legs hit the floor or the eyes open, right?
Dude, it's been so hot here, by the way, that we need to get the house that we bought. It doesn't have insulation in the ceiling, which is great. Yeah. So
In Chicago, how are winters for you?
a
Chilly
bit
Willy.
chilly. Bit chilly. The sweatshirts come out pretty early.
Tommy, I know a guy.
Yeah.
There are companies that can help you with that.
That's what. Well, we can't do it now because they won't do it now because it's too hot.
Oh,
So you gotta wait
sure.
till the fall.
Yeah.
So I've actually been the last 2 nights been in our like the living room because we have a fan in there. It's just been insane. So
I think we would literally die if there was not a fan in our bedroom. I think even if we do have air conditioning and insulation on the ceiling,
you'd break the streak.
I think it would be horrible if I didn't have. I do not like being hot when I'm sleeping. Just do not. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
Agreement.
Those are trials and tribulations that I've lived through in the past, and I try really hard not to anymore.
Our first house had a very thin insulation on the attic, and after a couple years in there, we were like, you know what, we should just roll our own insulation. And we bought there was a sale on Home Depot at some point. I bought really thick insulation, and I rolled it myself. Put on some gloves, put a little mask on so I didn't get any insulation in the lungs. It made a huge difference. Huge difference.
Go figure.
It was amazing. I'm telling you, I think you should really prioritize this one, Tommy.
No, we are.
Yeah.
So that, and
All
we're
right,
gonna put. So we got a lot of stuff planned.
Good. We made a decision on that one. Let's move on to the next thing.
Glad we figured that out for you this morning.
Well,
Yep,
for home
good deal.
construction at 7:30. So
All right. Sweet. Speaking
Awesome.
of construction,
yeah.
anything else under construction?
Ooh, that's a burn. Wow.
It's in preview.
It's not a burn.
It's in preview. So I did see some scathing things across Twitter. I mean, look, be nice, people. Be nice. Like there were some really stern comments around Datamarts and how they're not ready to go prime time yet. I'm like, people, this is not releasing a final product immediately. This is releasing a preview product, and they're taking this time to inform themselves of figuring out how Datamarts should be leveraged within the Power BI ecosystem. So,
man, you're jumping right into it. I have a yeah. Oof.
So we're talking about Datamarts today.
So today's topic is all about
It's
Datamarts.
awesome. And
I do want to put another
gonna be a
blog
good
announcement. So I had one of my customers sent me a link from one of the blog posts that came from Microsoft. Data in space, and actually I saw a very funny tweet from David Eldersveld, if you were following those, where David Eldersveld has a picture of Willy Wonka, and he says, "I've hidden 5 golden tickets around the office. Anyone who finds a golden ticket gets an extra vacation day. Go around the office with your phone up, looking for." The stuff he comes up with is just hilarious to me. It's so tongue in cheek on how he the jokes that he plays, but. I thought it was
Lost in Space for sure.
Oh,
Data in space.
That's another good one.
It's like with the iOS device. So this was an announcement yesterday, right? Like
yes.
the virtual experience that we've seen in like the
a lot of demos
or the Ocular or whatever
Oculus or 3D space things.
Like that was a year or two ago.
Yeah,
and now like they're showing that as an option on the iOS device.
Well, I think what has happened here.
I want to pin. Yeah, right. Like pin reports all over the office.
Yeah,
these are like
for the one
numbers
person
right outside the sales office.
Yeah, for the one person who actually shows up into the office. I mean, there could be a useful thing, like, maybe you want to see people's vacation schedules, right? Maybe you have a vacation schedule, or when people are out of office
there you
on
go.
each of their cubicles, and you can
On
pin
their
that
door, yeah.
on their door,
yeah.
maybe something like that. That could be like
Yeah.
updated real time.
That's
But
a lot of work for something you can pretty develop in 5 minutes. Look at all the time I spent.
It's a
Now you
virtual
can...
world, man. Virtual reality. It's where we're going.
Okay.
Metaverse.
Thought we were talking about Datamarts, but
well, I think this is a worthy
This is an
opener. So
okay.
I think it's interesting. I do think in this day and age where we have a ton of people who are already consumed with their devices and mobile things, having them walk around the building like this with their hand out in front of their head, like, is not going to help.
You know what we should do? We should develop some type of glasses, right?
Oh yeah,
And
where you
can,
could,
yeah,
only,
yeah.
Uh-huh.
If only there were like glasses that could bring virtual
Reality.
reality.
That's what I'm saying. That you could actually have your data and
I
you
like
can
it.
say something like, okay,
Tommy, this
summon
isn't
the system.
this is a winner of an idea.
That's what I'm saying.
And
No
then
one's
and then we're
developing.
gonna have a glove or like a finger pointer thing
Yeah.
because you need to take action, right? And then eventually it's just gonna be an implant.
Guys, we should stop the
Right.
podcast right now. I think I found
The $1 million
what to
idea
do.
right
$1
here.
million idea.
Pretty sure these ideas are well in flight, but hey.
Yeah.
Well, so
No one's...
well, I'm going to give you a little hook here. Power BI is very popular, as you guys may know. And if you read the blog article about what data in space looks like, there's a little note here. I think halfway down, they start making a note to this is a feature that is partnered with a new Azure feature called Azure Anchors or something like that. Azure Spatial Anchors. So if I had to put my thinking cap on, a lot of times where I see things go is, hey, Microsoft made this new thing called Azure Spatial Anchors. Hey, what's our most popular product? Power BI. Let's see if we can make those two things work together and see if we can stick these two things so people are interested in the Power BI product, naturally go over and figure out how to use spatial 3D anchors using this suite or tool or whatever that is. So I feel like there's a lot of this going on when I see these things. You can put two and two together pretty easily here.
So what would that experience look like, right? Like, this is pretty cool because if you have all of a sudden you have an app, right? You're walking around, it's like bing, notification, like shows you a little map, like, hey, by the way, you're on the 3rd floor. There's these reports outside these areas if you want to go check them out. Like, oh, cool. Now it can go to a museum, man.
That's
right?
true. This could be
A
museum level.
would be a good
Scroll
place.
through.
A museum would be a great place for
this
this.
person.
I like that one.
Self-guided tours.
What they should do is actually put like some type of moving floor down. So if you actually click on a bookmark, it just starts bringing you to another room. Aha. You put a bookmark in the report or a drill through.
I like it.
Time travel? What?
Time travel. Yeah. Learn more about the T-Rex. What is going on?
Warp me to the next room. Yes, please.
I can see this as being any kind
off
of
the rails.
Yeah. Anyways,
off the rails.
Good idea. Really like it. I got to play with it a little bit, see how it pans out. This has been a feature that's been touted for, I don't know, a year or two. I've seen it demoed a couple times. I've never been able to really play with it.
Dude.
You could
geocache
have a report
reports that shows a video instead of stuff. Oh, that'd be cool. Start a company.
That's
Tommy,
right.
There's your $1 million.
That's right. Your family's a geocaching family. You guys do that stuff.
Who?
You. Don't you do it?
No.
No? I've done a couple. There's a couple out front of my house. I got the kids all riled up and we went running around. They're hard to find, those little suckers.
Your kids?
No. Well, geocaching. Have you done geocaching, Tommy?
No, what is it like putting on a collar on your child?
Oh my goodness. All right, real quick here.
Wow.
Another derivation.
Welcome.
All right. So we learned about this
from this get really big.
Is this like the
Early
dog
It's
collar,
huge.
the virtual dog collar?
Or is it still big?
It's I think it's still pretty big. You go download an app, like a geocaching app, and it shows you like a GPS location of something. So it's like going out and exploring your real physical world, and you go to this little green dot or something. They give you like a hint, something or something like that, and you have to kind of
treasure hunt.
get close to the area. No, it's not.
Took over the world for like 3 months.
Well, I mean, this data in space feels a lot like
virtual.
Pokemon.
Though.
Yeah,
that was virtual too.
It was
you
virtual.
Had to go to a location.
Yeah.
No, geocaching's legit physical.
But you go find a little something, and so sometimes it's like these old film canisters that you would find. So we found one, it was an old film canister. You took off the top, and there was a little note in there that said, "Here, sign this piece of paper that you were here, or whatever. Date it with your first name or whatever, and then leave something for the next person." And there was like a little rock in there or something like that. So we had some Scoopy tokens from Culver's, and so we took a couple, not Scoopy tokens, free ice creams. So we took a couple free ice creams, rolled them up, and it was right next to the Culvers, and we stuck them in there and gave it for the next person. So the next person would roll through, come by, sign it, and then they would be able to
Be
say,
like, bam!
I got free ice cream.
cream!
Exactly. So
Look, there's a Culver's right there.
exactly right.
I'm glad that so that's still
That
in
was nice,
existence.
Mike. That's a good treat. That's a good thing you leave.
I thought it was
a really
nice.
good treat.
Yeah, I try to be generous to the person behind me. Maybe they wanted some, Andy's mint delight or some whatever they're having the day, flavor of the day. Anyways,
Flavor of the day. What? Speaking of the flavor of the day, gentlemen, what
Another-
is the flavor of the day? The Datamart.
Datamart is the flavor of the day. So I think this is going to. So let's jump into Datamarts. There's a new blog article around Datamarts as well. Create a Datamart in minutes. Be able to spin up your own Datamart. All right, here we go. Let's dive into Datamarts.
You already lit the fire. You already said about the reaction online.
Well, there's been reactions. Yes, I definitely think there's been reactions to stuff online. I have done my fair amount of digging into it. Mixed reviews. But let's get into.
So let's get into the details, gents.
Let's do it.
Right?
Where do these things fit?
First thoughts?
Yeah.
What sets it apart?
So I think when I communicate or when I talk about the Power BI ecosystem, and this is pulling right from Matthew Roach, you want to transform your data as far upstream as possible and as little as downstream as necessary. I think I screwed that up, but it's close enough. So the idea is you want to have some place where you're doing the data transformations to shape the data so that Power BI is happy with it. And I don't really use, honestly, anymore. Power Query is just for prototyping for me anymore. I don't really use Power Query as part of my actual ETL pipeline anymore. I usually do all of that in Databricks or something in Synapse. That's where.
But you're an enterprise guy now.
Yeah,
I am now. So it's not for normal people. But I think when I talk about the enterprise data warehouse and then a data mart or marts in general, I'm going to abbreviate it a bit, I really consider the Power BI analysis services, the Power BI thin and model concept. I consider the model the data mart or a mart of data. I don't know how you want to classify that. So what I think is happening here with the actual definition of a data mart inside PowerBI.com, it's just kind of maybe shifted my definition of what a data mart is into this SQL and analysis services type engine thing that's there. And that's kind of how I perceive the data marts. From the technology stack, there's like a SQL component to it. So it's SQL tables, and relationships. And then there's this analysis services part of it where you have relationships, measures, data types on top of columns. So that's kind of where I see it. I don't know. How about you guys? How do you guys perceive it?
Tommy, all you.
I mean, I think you have to take this again. You really have to get out of the enterprise role that you're in, Mike, because the percentage
I don't, because it makes a lot of good money for me.
It makes great. No, keep doing it. Keep doing it, but take the hat off. For
maybe okay. Taking the hat off.
Because the percentage of people that are using Power BI and that I think the audience is kind of geared for, there's a lot of people who are not in that space, right? Where they're not using Data Factor or Synapse. Like they are primarily focused on Power Query, probably using data flows. And for me, where Data Marts fits, the idea of it right now is very, very powerful, right? But we've talked about this before, and I think the people's reactions online to me are justified. It's not a full product right now. It's not really even a product that I would feel comfortable rolling out, putting in part of my deployment. It works sometimes. Like there's a few features if you try to connect to a particular table, if you don't want to do the live connection, that is yes or no. But the biggest problem, like the biggest hang up I have right now, and I'll keep hammering on this till it changes, is what's the difference developing a Power BI data set, a gold report, and then doing just your thin reports that we've talked about in the past, where the deployment, I can develop it in Tabular Editor, I can do all the same features, and I can do it a lot quicker than developing it in the data mart and then doing the same type of connection. I still have one report that I can develop, and I can still do all those edits in Tabular Editor. To me, the marginal difference of whatever a data mart does different from the output, I can't justify that rolling out. I can test it, but I'm not going to recommend it to anyone, nor am I going to make my team do it.
So I agree with you, but I think what a data mart is, I think a data mart is the so let me give you some other flavor where I think Microsoft's going with this, right? If you click on create a new data flow in a premium workspace, so one of the things that is a barrier to anything we're talking about data marts is a data mart must be in a premium capacity, premium per user or premium Azure A SKU, EM SKU, or P1 SKU, whatever the SKU is, it's got to be a premium thing. So it's already kind of limiting you, and I feel like it fits that role of when from a legacy standpoint, this feels like an access database type thing to some degree, right? I have this database where I can go grab some tables, I can stitch them together. I'm able to kind of auto generate some schema and pull some tables together that are at a reasonable scale. And then what I would do in the past would be create the access database, connect to that thing with Excel, and then I'd have my queries coming through. So I could refresh the access thing and then refresh the Excel thing. This feels very much the same, but I think in some way, when we had live connected reports, the thin report and the data model, I think that's a hackish solution at some degree. Like, it definitely makes sense. It works very well where you have a model and a thin report, but I think you are limited in some degree where you kind of want the model where we have a single data mart that supports many different reports, right? You want a data mart to house those things. So in order to do that correctly, you needed to use many different tools to do this, right? The first tool was you had to go use data flows if you wanted to have reusable data sets, right? So if you imagine with me multiple thin reports on the end here, right? You'd have to have a table of products master, and then that dimension table could be created and groomed inside data flows. And then you'd have to load that data flow into a Power BI desktop file, which acted as a cube. And so you can make your relationship between that table and other data that you're interested in. And then you would publish that report. And then from there, you would connect one to hopefully many different other thin reports. So all I'm seeing here is it's like this centering or a collection of tools where we're saying, let's take data flows, let's take the cube that is Power BI Desktop, and let's stick them together and call it a data mart. And now it all kind of lives in one space. I think that's what they're trying to do here.
So I'm gonna weigh in here a little bit, right? Because I think even in our initial comments and where we continue even today is a little bit analyzing data marts from an enterprise level. How do we scale? How do we build it bigger? How do we integrate all the things? And I don't know if that's what it was built for, right? If like I'm going to challenge us to think, I guess, slightly differently here, right? From the standpoint that you don't go through this amount of effort if for the lay self-service user, it is easy to use Power BI and get what you want out of it end to end.
Sure.
Right? I have to imagine that if you're going to invest the amount of time that they have in building an experience that, for all intents and purposes, abstracts a ton of like, where do I go? What do I do now? Like, why is this not working? Right? Like, it kind of just blurs the lines between the technologies here a bit. And if I'm using data marts in the guise of I'm just a business user, I want to connect to my data, I need to do some transforms and shaping, like, it does a really good job of just presenting that front and center to me and allows me to do a lot of the harder things that I would have to know, that like the different pieces in the PBIX file, pop it back and forth. Like, it is interesting to me that going back between the model and the data frames are these really small icons on the bottom, though, right? Like when I'm interacting, because I would think you'd want to put those kind of front and center for the self-service user, be like, hey, it's not buried under here when you pop back and forth.
It reminds me of Power Pivot.
But at the same time, maybe that's because it's Excel, or, to your point, Tommy, like maybe that's on the right-hand side when you use Power Pivot, that's where they were. But I'm not disappointed with the experience as of yet, if I'm looking at it through that lens, right? So there are kind of two really not unique, two use cases that I see right out of the gate that are prepped to be really powerful for even me in my organization as I'm trying to do stuff with the BI, right? And let me lay those out. One is in our enterprise ecosystems that are especially cloud, what is one of the number one challenges we have with just information?
Refresh.
I think it's just
and end users.
Yeah, end users. I'm saying just being able to get access to stuff, right? I
Get
think
access to
it's
data,
just connecting
right?
to the stuff to begin with.
So I haven't hit up all of the different connections and types and things, but so far in the lens of like how do I enable and get people a quick interface and access to the data that only I have or my team has through Databricks or some other backend system like SQL, right? How do I give them this information quickly and easily and efficiently? Dude, in 5 minutes, I was able to stand up a Datamart last night, like connect the pieces and share the data set. And then now with the new experience of the report, just, build me my own report. I need this and I need this and I need this. Now, the only limitation in here that I think is needed is in those quick reports, I need people to be able to add filters because I don't want them to hit everything because I don't want to throw everything, nor can I throw everything into a data mart due to volumes, right? But if I'm thinking about like the last weeks of worth of data for some things, and I need users to just have general access to data, like that's a perfect use case, and one that I see Datamarts like just carving mass amounts of time off of, like engineering and IT having to build these really big components to a full-fledged data mart that's going to support many different reports that but now I can bring these two things in line and I can actually build a self-service kind of data mart first for data access while I coordinate and make a new real enterprise data mart for the business area and further bigger reporting for them. So like I see a lot of potential there.
I'm not doubting that in any way. I think that's not what I'm trying to poo-poo here. I think there's a shift.
And I'm not saying you are.
And I think what we're seeing here is this is the very first large shift of moving. This has been okay. We'll refer back to episode 1 of the Explicit Measure podcast. I thought at some point in time everything Microsoft is pushing is go cloud, but at all levels, right? It's everything we're talking about. It's go cloud, and so I see this as being the final missing piece that we didn't have to be able to model data in the cloud. And so I feel like this is we had data flows being introduced that was Power Query in the cloud, or we have actually Power Query in the cloud now. We have reports. You can build a full report in the cloud. The only thing we really couldn't do is a lot of modeling, which was like making measures and making relationships inside tables of data that existed there. This, I feel like, is that solution. I can now create the new tables, the SQL tables. I have the ability to use and I do really like this feature that they have in here. It allows you to like manipulate how you want to make things. Like you can go into a SQL view and see the SQL view of things inside this. So I think that's really slick. I think it's a really good idea there. So I think this is like that your next hybrid thing. And I'm actually interested in, Seth, in where you think would be some solid use cases around where you would want to stand up a full data mart, like from a control, a security standpoint. What would be a good use case around where you feel that would sit? Like walk me through a user story or a user journey around what that would look like to you.
Sure. I'm actually thinking of implementing one right now because we have some needs in the org.
Yeah.
But think like finance is one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like in finance, I have massive amounts of data coming from many systems, and a lot of that comes into the cloud or into my different instances to be unified and then centralized and pushed reporting. You don't do that with finance data, right? Especially with some of it's very sensitive and needs to be locked down and only used and seen by few people.
Yeah.
So if they're utilizing the BI team, there's a level of trust and conversation and signatures likely that have to go around with the person or myself that is engaging with that work. But it limits us from the standpoint that, okay, now I have to stand up individual infrastructure
to segment it
for
away from
some of
everything
the
else.
finance,
Yeah,
some of the
that makes sense.
finance needs, because it's not like they're going to have their own SQL database. Like they may, right? But
But we're not going to
typically
expect them
not.
to be a
They're going to
SQL
have some
expert. Okay,
systems,
I
right?
like
They're
that.
going to have some systems that they're sucking data in.
Great
They've
example.
locked down their Excel files and SharePoint, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But if you think about how finance views data, a lot of it is snapshot, right? Like they
Yeah.
want a point in time to be captured, and that's where a database does things really effectively or efficiently, where storing things is a really good thing.
Yep.
So with Datamarts, I'm kind of unblocked in many aspects of connecting and centralizing around that data, but then keeping the security of that very small without having to plug into a lot of IT resources or spin up a lot of machines behind the scenes or like set up all the infrastructure for that. You seem to disagree with me,
allow me to chime in.
Continue.
Allow me to share an opinion.
Go ahead.
First,
It may not be
everything
right,
you
just an
said-
opinion though. We'll
it's just an
caveat this.
opinion. Yeah. I'm not Mike, so not everything you say is right. But here's the thing. Everything you say, I agree with in terms of the use case. The problem that I'm almost can't comprehend that we're not getting over is everything you said I can do in Power BI desktop and provide that deployment and apply that process, and I can do it more efficiently in Power BI desktop. And so what's the difference with
how can you stage store data outside of an Excel file
stage
without
store
additional
data? Well, you can't do that in Datamart right now.
If I want to capture,
it does not stage
state. I don't get that ability in the database on the back end.
You don't get it in a Datamart. It's like right now. It looks like they took a Datamart. They put Power Query. It's like they took a Honda. They took Power Query on the wheels. They made the engine a Power BI desktop, and they're calling it a Datamart. It's all just the pieces that we're already using, and they just combined it together.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
But that's my point. That's my point. But that's my point previously.
But you're still connecting to a data flow. You're not creating a data flow. You're still connecting to one or creating the SQL query. It's just literally Power BI desktop without the report, the visual side of it in the cloud.
100%.
That's it.
It's exactly, and I think that's the intent, though.
Yeah, but if I want to do that deployment and share with others and provide that security where people connect to the report, I can do that in Power BI desktop or publish that into the service. What I'm saying is, in order for this to be a true deployment for me, like it's got to serve some other purpose.
Yeah.
Right now, it doesn't do anything different.
But are you thinking?
I was gonna say you just put your IT
hat
on.
Lens of like,
you
and your BI team versus I'm the guy in marketing, and I know that there's this thing called Power BI. What would you rather teach them? All of the things that you know, or hey, what you can do is you can go connect to this Datamarts thing, and it'll you can walk through. You can connect to your sources. It'll automatically show you how to transform data. Like all you need to know is on the bottom right hand side, you can click models, and if you have multiple tables, you can relate them there, and then you have a data set you can work from. What's easier?
It's this. You still have to teach them what
it's
a relationship.
Not the same. It's not the same.
So you still have to teach them relationships. Hey, good luck teaching them a measure in Power BI service.
I'm not saying that you obfuscate everything, but if the challenge, like to me, this potentially tries to solve the problem of where we say 90% of our issues are. Where do you spend 90% of your time? Data prep.
Yeah.
Connecting data prep, cleaning, like
100%.
shaping data. Like, is that not what this tries to ease for the end user?
No, absolutely not. Because the data prep, you still have to do it in Power Query. So if they don't know Power Query, good luck for them trying to figure out if that's accurate or not.
Now there's an interface that they can use a diagram GUI tool. They can.
I don't think, but I think you're misleading, Tommy. Who this person's what this is geared actually towards. This is not geared towards a person who's never seen Power Query before. This is not also geared towards anyone who's never created a measure before. This, to me, is those. For lack of a better term here, I think this is geared towards those citizen developers, the individuals who are already creating very complex, understand Power BI, essentially, loading data in, using Power Query, getting tables together, understands to some degree relationships stitching together. Now, granted, that may not be at a performant level where we're looking at like a full star schema and doing the full data confirmation of conforming the data down to something that's going to be really usable. but they're gaining to the level of they're starting to understand this. So I would the audience of this is, I think, to Seth's point, right? If I walked into a finance department and said, "Look at this amazing thing I can do," and then again, whenever I've showed Power Query to a finance team, they've loved it. They understand how it works. They quickly grab onto it. It makes sense. Measures maybe needs a little bit more learning for that team, but like that team is so technical with data and numbers. They understand what they need to do to shape data to get it into a form that they can use it. Now, granted, is it going to be IT level type design and thinking through that? Probably not. But I think, to Seth's point earlier, I think this is a very narrowed use case. And I think as we see this continue to grow and become more capable, as we see more features enriched here, I think you're going to see potentially a more of this being able to be adopted from the IT organization. And where I think this needs to go, and again, this is where I think we'll have to see how this pans out. But like, I really like the story of this Datamarts. What I really want to have happen here is I want the grow up story, because I know for a fact we're going to hit thresholds. So I've already seen people on Twitter talking about, look at my Power BI model. I've taken my entire enterprise warehouse system and I've loaded all the tables into Power BI desktop and I made my own data mart or own data warehouse. And I'm like, Power BI desktop is not a data warehouse, period. Like, I would solely disagree with you on that level. It's you cannot use it that way. It will fall over. So to tout that is a false is a false statement.
No, and everything we're talking about deployment and process, I agree with. Like, in terms of allowing more people to access the data, to touch the data in the right way.
Yep.
Mike, you said the first time we though talked about build, there's still limitations right now where
Correct.
you turn on data marts for everyone or no one.
But that's
And
it's an administration thing.
and
Like, yeah, totally.
right.
In my opinion,
And-
that's a huge miss.
And
Because
the other side too, yeah.
I don't want a whole bunch. And again, right now, Datamarts doesn't cost you anything. Right now, it's in preview, and so therefore there are no costs associated with when Datamarts are showing up. So I don't really know what the pricing of Datamarts looks like.
Right.
So I'm a little bit in the dark. I'm like, I want to try it out. So I have my own like little segment of a tenant that I'm going to try it in. I'm not going to go put right now. I'm not going to go put this in anyone's environment at this point. It's too green for me. There's some distinct missing features here that we need to have in place before I can really buy into this thing.
And let me be clear, I want the framework of Datamarts deployed for my tenant, for my organization, the way that I can, in a sense, share or have people access a data set and help them build from that. What I have a problem right now with is the actual tangible tool itself. The framework, the idea, the process, all not just makes sense, but is the next logical step of what we do. We're not creating these individual reports.
Sure.
We have these set truth data sets that we're working from. We have that framework. But the problem is right now, it does not behave any differently. A data mart behaves no differently than a Power BI desktop file published in the service.
Okay. So what are some of the problems Datamart solves?
So
right? one is I don't need a Windows machine.
You now have Mac users now can model their own data, correct?
Okay, then 5% of people use data on Mac. Okay.
I think you're underestimating the scale of organizations that use Macs.
Now I've opened up a wider audience.
Correct.
Okay.
And at the point in time that we are right now, Datamarts serves the populace of pure self-service user. How many? What is the spectrum? What is the spectrum or percentage of people doing the level of Power BI reporting and enterprise modeling and building that we do as BI team versus the number of people using Power BI on a daily basis? Just self-service. Small teams. I would say it's a fraction. Fraction.
Say the question to me again. I didn't quite follow you the whole way.
What I'm saying
say it again.
What I'm saying is what is the percentage of self-service users versus like us? BI teams,
totally. Okay.
Building enterprise solutions, etc.
So let me answer that from what I've observed. I think you're right. It's very small, but I think for every one data modeler, right? I think there's like this concept of like a person who models data, and then there's a person who makes reports, and then there's a person who consumes reports, right? For every one person making the data stitched together, there's probably like, for every one data model, there's probably anywhere between 5 to 10 report builders on top of that. And for every, one report builder, there's probably like 0 to 50 report consumers that are out there, right? So I think of it like as a bullseye, right? You're going to have a very, just Seth, to your point, right? We are very much in the very center of that bullseye. There's a very small group of us that are thinking enterprise, Power BI, how to scale it so it's mega scale, right? It could go really big, go really small, highly tuning and performance, working on all the licensing things so it's efficient and cost effective. To your point, though, I think the larger audience is, there's a large audience of, I just need to consume data from Power BI reports. I don't even want to make them. I just give me the data and make it show up.
Right. Here's another example, Tommy, where I'm gonna argue with you here, right?
Yes, arguments.
Because
that.
My wife joined a massive organization. They're very Power BI heavy. Their entire team still struggles with how to publish a report and share it in the service. Tommy, we just talked about this in the other thing. Like,
yeah,
how do you understand what are the base levels of like personal workspace and reporting, team, right? Like, this removes all of that from the standpoint that it's like I can go out, I can connect to my sources, I can, I'm not gonna say all of it, a lot of it, right? I can connect to my sources, I can create this data set, and I can share it, and people have access to data.
Guy, I hate to break this to you, but if they don't know how to publish a Power BI desktop file, good luck them creating a good data mart.
You're missing the point, right? Like they get tons of pre reports sent to them. They get a ton shared with them, but they have to work within their own ecosystem. At some point in time, especially as we're talking about democratizing reporting throughout an organization, we have to realize that there are people that are they're listening to you, Tommy, and what you're teaching and what you're showing, and they have no idea what your thoughts are around how you structure and utilize and build a model that's going to scale for 20 reports. They go back and they go, Tommy taught me how to do this thing. I know I have like 2 Excel files, this thing over here. Like, what is my experience in building something that is useful for me to use? And I think the point of Datamarts is to try to not dummy it down, but bring that experience into a realm that gives people access to the data and can like mush it up in the way that they may not know how to do with downloading the Power BI desktop and doing all of the different components within there. It is just a slightly easier experience.
So I think maybe we may be on 2 different paths as I'm hearing this. So allow me to if you can clarify something for me. What you're speaking about is the access, not necessarily the person creating it, because when we say self-service, right, a lot of those people who are self-service maybe don't have access to SQL. So are you saying the people who are developing the data mart or the access to the data mart? Where are you saying this is the game changer for?
I'm not saying, when did game changer come out of my mouth?
The difference with the purpose.
Tommy, I'm saying the focus.
Tommy's trying to pick a fight. Tommy's trying to pick a fight on this one.
Is the wrong spot.
Yeah.
But are you saying this is going to change the process for people developing data sets or the people accessing? Where is this so integrally different than what the process could be now?
It's a single user interface in the service that allows them to combine their data in a much more accessible way and offers more options than what you have in the Power BI desktop.
Because right now, because in desktop, you don't get the right, I mean, you can write SQL, but what you get in this application is you get the ability to make relationships, which you can with desktop, but you have the ability of using the graphical interface. So again, more of the so think of this, there's some more modern features that are coming on with this. Power Query actually has the graphical interface as you edit, modify, transform tables. You can't create a view inside Power BI. So if you wanted to stitch a couple tables together and create a view, you're basically just making a brand new table. So, I mean, I want to go back down to like what the technology under the hood is doing here, right? So there's some core technology, I think, underneath Datamarts that to me makes sense, right? Power BI, what it is analysis services. That's all it is. Analysis services and a visualization layer. What we're adding with Datamarts is a SQL layer. There's a SQL computer SQL engine in addition to analysis services. So what we're doing is we're getting all the benefits of what a normal SQL server would be doing inside the cloud or SQL serverless or whatever. And in addition to that, we're also adding to that the ability of putting analysis services. When you load, so if you go through the example that's on the Microsoft blog, which appropriately enough came out like last night, literally like right in time
It's
for
a really good point. It's a really good point.
right. This is June 23rd, June 20. Wow, this is like old. Why is this old and now just being featured? Anyways, it was just being featured today. But anyways, creating a Power BI data mart in minutes, right? Looking at their going through their example, going to the Northwind data set and grabbing stuff in and stitching it together and starting to see like how it auto. There's a part of this where it auto tries to create relationships in the SQL tables, and then if you want to write a new SQL statement to make a new table, this is a more control around how you want to shape some of that data. So you're now able to do additional stuff there that you couldn't before because we're adding the SQL engine.
But it's not just that, right? Like what this unlocks is, yes, you can build your perfect analysis services model, but if an analyst is reviewing that, right, through a report, through the lens of the report, how do they get access or triage something that's in the data layer? So what this allows is I can go connect to data, I can shape it, transform it, whatever, and then I can go write SQL queries against it. Right? That's another thing within here. I think personally, the only like in terms of use cases for Datamarts right now, there is I'm going to use it for data access and democratization of data for analysis 100%. Like I have systems that are hard to get access to the data. So it makes a ton of sense for me to spend time in figuring out how I can utilize Datamarts to create these lenses of information and start to share them throughout the organization and show people like, hey, you know SQL? Boom, you can go write your own SQL query.
Yep.
Hey, you have this data, like generate your own report and you can build it and you can save it wherever you want to, right? So in just data access, I think it's a phenomenal tool already. Caveat, what scares the heck out of me, and I'm not going to deploy it until I understand cost. I like so
Yep.
so here's some of the things that I've worked through in Datamarts, right? Obviously, there's a limit on how much data you can throw into the SQL database, and I think it's 100 gig right now, right? Loading times are actually pretty decent. Like I loaded up 8 million records in 17 minutes or so, and the queries coming out of there, they scare me because they were fast. I mean, fast. Doing aggregations on it, like doing the SQL query, like to me, that speaks like they're throwing a lot of hardware behind there to do my CPU. And there were some stalls, right, in the load, but like I need to understand if I spool up Datamarts and I create 30 of these and I start throwing data out in data access layers for a bunch of people to start using, what is that going to do to my premium capacity?
Instead of a refresh pop-up, it's just going to say enter your credit card info.
Right. So a couple caveats I guess I would point out, right? One is for the lay user setting up Datamarts. One, you need to be on premium Gen 2 of your premium instance, right? Know that when you flip that switch, it takes a while for everything to like spool up because you go through this exercise of like try to create a Datamart. It's like it keeps yelling at you that you haven't upgraded your instance. There are some just kind of nitpicky things which I'll provide in the different feedback channels of add your description here and you can't. I think what was interesting to me is when you create a data mart, like correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a one-to-one relationship between the data mart and the data set. They're inextricably tied, right? Like so it's the same thing, and a lot of the things you set on the data mart translate to the data set, like the name. Right. So when you create the name, it automatically goes to the data set. But then there are still options within the data set that appear to like present as options, but you can't change them. So there's some wonkiness there.
Yeah.
But overall, like it's the data access thing that I'm most excited about, and or providing a different capability within the use case for finance, provided I can do what I think I can do, but maybe I can't yet.
So and I think and Mike, you're speaking to it as well. It's interesting. The data access side, I feel, is the most redundant part of this. But what you're speaking, the other side of this is what I am most excited about Datamarts when it gets there, is that ability to create views. And I think it's going to become cross-platform. That's what, to me, is setting Datamarts apart. And when it's really evolving, in a sense, splitting the cell out of what a Power BI data set is and what a data mart is going to be. The
What?
access side,
Yeah, what was that comment you said? It's going to create multiple points of access.
Cross-platform, like
Oh,
possibly,
I mean,
right?
what
So
do you
to
mean by that?
me, I'm
What is that?
imagining,
I'm
yeah.
a Tableau user that can use it.
I mean, you can already use Tableau today against
Well,
analysis
yeah, I
servers
know.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if it doesn't have the SQL access, right? I'm imagining that, or at least in my head, this grow up story is it's going to play with the Power Platform. And I see a use case for that where there's the ability to interact with this, touch this in a Power App, but also automation side of it too. Like when a data mart refreshes, do something in Power Automate. To me, especially because there's that SQL side of it,
Okay, so
where then you really have that source of truth where it's not just a Power BI data set. It's more, it really is an umbrella or like your high level.
so where you went with cross-platform elements was so my initial thought of this was right. This to me seems like this is a connection between like what Dataverse is doing, because Dataverse is like kind of like a SQL thing with a whole bunch of tables behind it, and we now have like this ability to be able to model on top of a cube. So I can see like an area, an interesting thing in the future here where we could say, hey, we're working on dynamics, or whatever. We've got this thing up. Let's just connect it. Boom. Here's a whole bunch of tables that show up in the data mart. Let's just select the ones that we want from the Dataverse. Tink, 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 tink. Here's a couple tables. Start modeling some data together, so it speeds up that whole process around that. So I was also thinking, why don't I connect? Because this is now a SQL thing that does Power Query in it. Where's the need? Like, can I bolt on a Power App on top of this and start modifying data inside these tables? I don't know, because that's going to create all kinds of conflict with them. Like I have if I'm loading data from some single source, or like this could be a very interesting connection point between all the things that are Power Platform. Where, to your point, Tommy, Datamart's done. Where's all the Power Automate actions around Datamarts? When Datamart's finished refreshing, add that, or refresh this one table in the Datamart, right? Stuff like that would be really cool to see there as well. So I think there's a lot of potential there.
I like that. I like that thought. Right. I think it begs to spend some more time thinking about the back end infrastructures and where and why this pivot happened. Right. Because there's obviously some challenges that exist within the existing way data flows was set up.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
On completely different back end infrastructure.
There's two data flows.
Probably created quite a few problems in trying to get to this place. Right.
Yes.
Because if we think like, and I'm going to keep coming back to it, but like the data access aspect of this and analysis where people can write queries against the cleaner data or like somewhat prepped data for them, it's huge, man. But is it really a data mart at that point, right? Maybe this is just the data access layer that we can also use as a data set.
That's very true. That's
right. Maybe it serves. So maybe our thought of like a data mart in the enterprise space is not the way to think about these things, and it's a naming issue. maybe this was.
That's been our problem the whole time.
This is the analysis tool, right? That is purely for making sure people have access to the data in their organization, and they can get into the grain if they need to, and just access data. Maybe this solves 80% of your requests, Tommy, for reporting. I want to see this data. Okay, great. Like here's a quick data mart. Here's spit out the tables. Go build your own report.
I'm not going to hammer on this again because we've already pushed this to the ground. But again, I can already do that. We're already trying to do that with data sets, or that's already been the process.
How can you do that in a data set right now?
I publish the data set and I provide them access.
No, that requires them to go to the data set.
No,
and
I can
create a report.
No, they can go to Power BI and say create a new report off the data set. I don't need a data mart for that.
Right.
I can do the exact same thing.
Can they interrogate the table? Can they group it? Can they write a select query against it?
Do I need them to do that? Can I
Maybe
do that with
they
the
need to
Datamart
do
right
that.
now? Can I do
So
that with the Datamart
so
right
this
now? No, it's a live connection.
but I think what
It's
Seth
the
is bringing,
same.
but you're right, Tommy,
Yeah.
but you're missing a point though. What Seth is pointing at is there is a moment, like what we're adding with the data marts is we're adding the ability for someone to continue shaping data from the initial grab of the information, right? So a data mart gives you the raw table, and you can make other raw tables on top of this and bring it back into the model. And I think that's the part that's missing from what you're speaking to is you're giving someone a data set, but it's literally these tables with these relationships. That's it. You can only build what you can build. Now you can build measures, but that's all that you can do. If you need a new relationship, if you want to take two tables and make a third table, now you're doing like a summarize, and now you're writing a DAX query to make a summarized table that does the thing that you want to do, which we all know is probably not the best way of doing it. You'd want to be doing that in the desktop version of that model. So
Right.
I think that's where I'm getting a bit more hung up here is like this is where I think the data marts fit a much better space here, where you're saying I need access to data. Here you go. I mean, there's so many wonky things yet so far in this thing. There's like a million little missing features here that I want to go through and say here's what I really like about these other tools. And I think one of my biggest, anyways, I'm going to leave that for a moment here. But I think you're right, Seth. I think you're correct. Data marts do something different than just sharing a data set. There's another level of control that you're able to give to somebody else to do more with what's inside that existing data.
Next time, Datamarts, data access versus just a data set.
Yeah, exactly right.
I'm gonna spend some more time on this. Like you bring some valid points, Tommy. Right?
No, and you do too.
I think there's an added layer in here where even after this conversation, I'm gonna kind of rethink. But I'm excited about a particular use case of data access. And when we talk about this again, which I'm sure we will, then I'll bring that up then. But overall, there's some just rough edges, in implementing and deploying, but I'm not so poo poo, right? Like on it in the context of certain use cases, right?
Yeah. And I want to be very clear. Your framework and your process to deliver is where I want to go and where we should go. I am not disagreeing at all about that process and that story. Like that is what we're trying to do right now in terms
But
of
that's the challenge and where this conversation is good because we're trying to redefine process. We're trying to figure out where this fits into the ecosystem.
Yes. Where does it fit in the ecosystem?
That's where the challenge is,
right.
I'd agree.
So have we nailed this yet?
No,
obviously not, right? But I think this is where the conversation is valuable, and definitely worth exploration.
Yeah. And we just had this conversation 2 episodes ago about deployment. This is that next stage. So by no means am I arguing that side, but I'm glad we're at least agreeing with that.
I think this is another one of these cases where I think we're going to continue seeing the evolution of this. And again, I also would say I think this is taking the same mentality as all the other Microsoft Power BI products, right? 5 minutes to wow, right? 5 minutes to value, right? So I think even the blog article that's now linked up there is posted on the main page. Create a data mart in minutes. That to me speaks volumes around what they're trying to accomplish. It's one of these, make it easy enough for us to get started, to get you engaged and to find value with it of whatever you're doing in moments. Once you understand the capability of the value that they're producing, then you spend more time investing in all these other things, and then it becomes this, like what we did with Power BI. It's now a 7-year journey for us or more of learning and divesting and investing time into like all of this stuff that we think that's now adding more value. I really like it. How far are we on time? I don't even look at the time because
4 minutes. Time for a good wrap up.
Man,
okay. From all of you.
All right. So we never got to things that are like, this is my hit list. I want to have at least the hit list of some things that so for people who haven't played with Datamarts, we've been talking about like, where does it fit? Where does it fit in the ecosystem? How is it different from a Power BI thin report and model? We've been talking a lot about that. I do want to point out some things like, okay, it's in preview. what are some of these preview things that what are some features that you feel like are missing? And, what tells you that this is in preview, I guess is where I'm kind of going with some of this. Do you have any kind of, I have like a handful
Yeah,
of things that I'm looking for.
It's a little rough around the edges. Like there are some aspects that don't work well.
Such as?
I tried to connect to, so if you have multiple tenants,
Hmm?
right? Sometimes I have to log into Power BI
Hmm.
using incognito,
Yep.
right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
trying to connect to my OneDrive, an Excel file, like in
Oh,
SharePoint or
yeah.
whatever, like it was throwing some bizarre errors, like it didn't have access to my local, or something odd like that, even though I was logged in.
Yeah.
So couldn't make that work yet.
Yep.
Ironically enough, when I connect to my SQL server, it already pre-populated my creds for me. I was like, I wonder how you did that, but you couldn't give me access to my OneDrive. So that was like a bad and a real wow cool. The just premium Gen 2, you have to have your environment set up to be able to use it.
Yep.
So and then like just little nitpicky stuff, like there's set a description on a data set. You can't, it's a blue link, you try to click on it, you can't, you have to do it in lineage on the data mart itself, like, or several other areas. So there's just like some implementation things that are a little they'll fix them. But overall, like I said, like in the context of the things that I've been exploring, for the use cases I have, I'm pretty excited about it.
So some things that I'm missing, or what I see here is, if you write a SQL query, you cannot save it. So if you write a SQL query, you're able to write it, and you can create a SQL query inside there. So there's a little tab in the bottom right hand corner, which I do like the fact that, my opinion here, the UI is much better on this than it is in desktop. Because in desktop, you're like constantly going from left side of the page to the right side of the page. You're always jumping back and forth between what's going on inside desktop. And when I'm talking to people or training people on Power BI, I'm constantly looking at the left-hand panes and then going all over to the right-hand side to switch the views. To me, there's a much more consolidated experience where all the buttons you need to select to navigate are on the left-hand side, and the top ribbon bar is like the actions or things you're doing on top of stuff. So that's, to me, that's very intuitive. Selecting something, so there are some weird SQL statements. So in SQL SSMS, I'm used to writing like a select statement and then another select statement right behind it, and then I get two windows of views of data. It does not compute. Like, I don't know what it was doing, but I wrote two select statements, and it just and then I think if you're on the SQL window, like one thing you do in SSMS is, like, if you right click on a table, it says view this table in SQL. It should do that. It should have a shortcut command that says view this table, and it should do it properly, because what you don't want is, and again, everyone knows this, you don't want to select star from the table because it will just do things. You want to select top 100 or top 1000 or something like along those lines. That doesn't make it take forever. So I think you should make it easier for the users when you're on the SQL view, right click on these tables on the left-hand side and say,
my biggest pet peeve in the SQL view is I can't use F5.
Yeah. No.
If you know SSMS, F5 to run.
You have
to
refresh your browser.
Page and nukes your query.
You got to go use the button to, yes, exactly. So that's another pet peeve there. The relationship view, all kinds of bugs on that one. There must have been like an older code base that they were using for the relationships between tables, because the lines and how they draw themselves, not the same experience that's in desktop, and I do not like it. Like, lines go behind other tables, and so it looks like the relationship comes out of one table when in fact it doesn't. It actually travels behind the table to something else. So there's some kind of weird logic that's going on there that needs to be updated. In addition to that, other things that I'm kind of miffed about is, if I'm creating measures, I can create a measure, which I'm very happy about, but I can't make a folder for a measure, and there's no.
You can, but it does. You have to go out of it and then come back.
What?
Yeah, so you have to go to the relationship view. There's a measure folder. You add it. It looks like nothing, and then if you go out and then come back in, it's added.
Okay, fix that, because that's solely. Yeah. This is the same problem I have in desktop. Doggone it! Like the navigation windows on stuff like this is absurd. Like, I should be able to eat. Like, this is. It drives me nuts. It drives me absolutely bonkers, because you're giving me all the features. I need all these features on all the pages, right? If I go into the report view, I can't make things in folders. I can't move them to folders. If I go to the modeling view, then I can. So let me create this stuff anywhere I want. Now, what I will say is on the relationships view, I can actually see the measure now. Like, like this is how it should have been. This is what's missing in desktop. If I click on a measure, I should be able to see the measure there, or I should be able to make a new measure on the relationship view. I know what I'm writing if I'm writing a sum on a column, I don't need to see the data in a report view. Just let me make the measure inside the doggone relationship view. I'm so burnt about this when it's not in desktop already. Like, I don't understand it. That's just boggles my mind. So there are some things that they're trying to do right, I think, in this space that makes a lot more sense. There's a create measure thing. I really wish that, I think measures in folders makes a lot of sense. I think we need to stop burying that feature in the properties pane on the relationship view. It needs, anywhere you're creating a measure, it needs to be easily exposed wherever that thing is handled. Stop burying it on the doggone relationships page. I'm trying to think of other things. I haven't played too much with the Power Query Visual Editor.
And we will talk about Datamarts again in the future.
Yeah, we definitely.
We have a hard stop on
I
couple
know,
folks, but
Seth's got to go do real work now.
Not cutting you off, Mike, but I'm cutting you off.
All right. Those are probably the extent of the things. Well, the reason I wanted to talk about this, so I had so I could have a list of these things. So I go back to Microsoft and be like, all right, here's the things that we think is the challenges right now. So, anyways, all right. With that, I've been officially cut off. Thank you all for listening to our ramblings around Datamarts. I hope you found some of this informative as we kind of beat up the idea of where does Datamarts fit, how does it fit into the ecosystem, and yeah, if you like this conversation, we'll probably do another one of these. Hang tight. There'll probably be Datamarts 2, Datamarts, more data and more something else. I don't know what to figure out something. More relationships, more data, kind of something like that. But we'll do another Datamarts conversation as we get into it a bit further, as it matures. I definitely think we're going to see improvements. We're going to see new features for it. So that's going to be very exciting for Microsoft to keep publishing those other new features. Our only ask for you is if you like this podcast, please just go ahead and share it. Share it on your social medias, or if you actually go to work in person, go ahead and tell a coworker about it and let them know that you found some value or this was somewhat entertaining. We're trying to play that line between entertainment and value added as well. Anyways, tell me, where else can you find the podcast?
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to Datamarts Strike Back as our next
episode. There it is. That's what
that's it. All this space.
That's the one we wanted.
So yeah, make sure to subscribe on YouTube. And if you want to hear Mike complain about display folders on the relationship,
100%.
Listen to the last 123 episodes.
It's probably been mentioned at least half of those episodes.
There's a good chance you'll find it.
Oh, yes.
Better than geocaching. So yeah, subscribe on Apple and Spotify. Like I said, leave a rating, helps us out a ton.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you all. We thank you for the community, and we'll see you next week.